Hello, everybody. Craig Johnson here, and today's story about famous dead authors takes us on a little trip to Russia in the 19th century. It's 1878 to 1881, and the topic today is this cute little button right here, Anton Chekhov. Anton Chekhov was in college then, and he was going to become a doctor. But he also thought, I'm a pretty good writer. I think I'm going to write a play. I like going to the theater, so I'm going to become a playwright too. And so he dashed off a play. Took him a little while, actually. And he showed it to his brother, Nikolai, and Nikolai, always very supportive, so yeah, you wrote a play. So he was going to send it, Chekhov was going to send it to the leading actress in Moscow at the time, a gal named Maria Yermolova. Maria Yermolova, sassy name right there. So he sends it off to her. She takes a look at it and sends it back. No thanks. So Chekhov's a little ticked off, and so he just bats the play aside and said, well, forget it. I'm going to become a doctor then, too. So he becomes a doctor, and he becomes a pretty good one. But all that time, he's also writing these little sketches, just like humorous little incidents of daily life in Russia at the time, too. And these short little things would get published in newspapers and magazines and stuff like that, a lot of times with a sketch that was by his brother Nikolai. And so Chekhov keeps writing, and he eventually writes hundreds of really well-polished short stories. They're a wonderful thing to read. So if you ever want to take a look at some of Chekhov's non-dramatic writing, his short stories are just great then too. Well, so then he gets the idea again too. It's like, you know what, I'm going to take another stab at that playwriting thing too. So he writes a couple short little one-act farces. Things like The Bear and Marriage Proposal too are pretty well known too. And these were really quite successful too. So I thought, great, now I'm going to write the kind of play that I really want to write. And so he writes a big full-length play. And it's a big flop. He writes another play, and it's a big flop. And then he writes a third play, and it's a big flop. And he's just like, forget it. I am done with theater. I am not going back there. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to write my short stories, and that's what I'm going to do. Enter Konstantin Stanislavski. He says, wait a minute there, Anton. That last play that you wrote, that was a big flop. I want to do a new production of it. That's exactly the kind of theater that I want to do. And so he takes that play, The Seagull, and turns it into one of the great kind of seminal productions of modern world theater. And his company, the Moscow Art Theater, then produces Chekhov's Uncle Vanya and The Three Sisters and The Cherry Orchard. Unfortunately, though, Chekhov had always suffered from respiratory problems, right? And he had contracted tuberculosis. So he was sent away by his doctors to get better at a spa town in Germany in 1904, and he died, unfortunately, at the really fairly young age of 44 years old. Interestingly, his body was sent back to Russia because he was pretty famous by this time. They wanted to give him a big burial. So it was sent back by train in a refrigerated boxcar that was marked oysters on the side, too. Very, very strange. Anyway, this story is actually not about Chekhov. It's actually about his brother, Nikolai. Nikolai was at college at about the same time, but Nikolai had to drop out of college. You see, he was an alcoholic, and often with big drinking bouts, he, of course, wasn't able to hold down a job or anything. And eventually, it was hard to find out where Nikolai was. And eventually, they know for a long time he was just wandering around the streets of Moscow. So he was living on the streets. He was a homeless person. And not too many years after that, 1889, I think, he died at the age of 31. But one of the things that Nikolai did for us and did for Chekhov was this. That first play that Chekhov got back and sort of batted aside, Nikolai took that play, the only copy of it, apparently, and put it in a safety deposit box, put it in the bank, and promptly forgot about it. And then, of course, he passed away, and no one knew about it. And then Chekhov passed away, and everyone had forgotten about that. And it wasn't until 1920 that someone actually opened up this safety deposit box and thought, oh my gosh, here is an unpublished play, a new play by Anton Chekhov. And they started reading it, and they got really excited. And then they got less excited because it was clearly the work of someone who was very young, writing their very first play with no knowledge of the theater. There are character plots, there are characters that sort of disappear, there are plot strands that sort of go nowhere, whole scenes that aren't shaped at all too. It's really just a hot mess of a play too. And they also realized it, well, no wonder that actress rejected the play. If you did the full manuscript, it would probably run about 5 to 7 hours. And in fact, like Act 1 is slightly longer than all of Uncle Vanya. Imagine. Well, this play, one other thing about it, is it didn't have a title page with it. Now, we usually call it Platonov because that's the central character in the play, but we really don't know what the name of the play was that Chekhov wanted it to be called. So there it was, and over the years then, people have ransacked this play because it is sort of a treasure trove of a lot of really unpolished sort of little nuggets of the kind of characters and themes and plot points and attitudes and tone shifts and things like that that Chekhov became later very, very famous for. So it's really fun to sort of pillage it and try to, cut and splice and put the whole thing back together again too. So you see it sometimes appearing by a whole bunch of different names. I wrote a couple of them down. That's Scoundrel Platonov. Fatherlessness, Sons Without Fathers, Don Juan in the Russian Manner, Wild Honey, that's the Michael Frayn version that appeared, I think, in the 1980s with Ian McKellen in it, and the Russian film Unfinished Piece for a Mechanical Piano. So there are a lot of people who have said, oh, I'm doing Platonov, or I have my own version of Platonov, and that's exactly what it is, because no one's going to do the whole Platonov then. Oh, imagine. So I wanted to show you this picture once again, because there was one other thing that Chekhov, or that Nikolai Chekhov rather, left for us, is he was a pretty good artist. And he did a number of paintings, including this portrait of his young brother, Anton Chekhov, right there. So today, I want to salute Nikolai Chekhov, Anton Chekhov's older brother. I know all your good qualities like the back of my hand. You are kind to the point of fault, magnanimous, unselfish. You'd share your last penny, and you're sincere. Hate and envy are foreign to you. You are open-hearted. You are compassionate with man and beast. You are not greedy. You do not bear grudges, and you are trusting. You are gifted from above with something others lack. You have talent.
Another fool has been born.
An angel has passed over us. If you close your eyes, you can hear the flowers growing.
Yes.
I have many brothers who would walk with me into this darkened wood and guide me on my way.
done. Everyone's here now, aren't they? So we really can eat. It'll hardly be a lunch at this point. It's more like an early dinner.
Our good doctor cannot enjoy a perfect summer afternoon in the company of dear friends.
Yes, I can. Around the dining room table. I'm sure they're ready for us.
Nikolai, the